We have been telling survival stories wrong for 300 years. Robinson Crusoe, Cast Away, Lord of the Flies. The pattern is almost always the same: a man, an island, a battle against nature, a return to civilization. We've been so hypnotized by that formula that we almost missed a book sitting quietly on the shelf that blows the whole template apart. 40 women, an underground cage, no island, no rescue, no answers, and a narrator who has never once seen a man's face. What Jacqueline Harpman wrote in 1995 isn't just a survival story. It might be the survival story, and the reason you've probably never heard of it is exactly the point. Jacqueline Harpman was a Belgian author, born in 1929, who spent most of her professional life as a practicing psychoanalyst in Brussels. She wasn't a prolific writer in the commercial sense. She wrote in French, in relative literary obscurity, but she was a deeply precise one. I Who Have Never Known Men, published in French as Moi qui n'ai pas connu les hommes in 1995, is only about 200 pages long. It took decades for an English translation by Ros Schwartz to give it the wider audience it deserved. Small book, enormous interior world. Why does this book matter right now? Because we are living in a moment where the question of what women's inner lives actually look like, stripped of every social expectation, every male gaze, every inherited role, is more urgent than it has ever been. Post-Me Too, post-pandemic isolation. In a cultural moment where we are renegotiating who gets to tell survival stories and whose endurance the culture actually values, this book arrives like a message from the future, written 30 years ago. Here's the setup. 40 women live in an underground cage. Metal bars, male guards watching their every move, artificial light, no windows, no sky. They have no memory of how they got there. They have no names for most of each other. They don't know what year it is or what country or whether the world above them still exists at all. They have simply adapted. They have built a routine, a small interior life, a fragile society. And then one day, inexplicably, the guards are gone, the keys are left on the floor, and the door swings open. And here is where the book does something quietly devastating. When that door opens, you expect a rush of relief, a surge of hope, a sprint toward daylight. What Harpman gives you instead is something far more uncomfortable: hesitation. These women have been captive so long that freedom is almost an abstraction. The landscape they walk into isn't a lush forest or a welcoming beach. It's an endless, featureless plain. No cities, no people, no signals. Just flat gray earth under an indifferent sky, stretching in every direction forever. The escape isn't triumphant. It's another kind of prison, but this one has no walls to push against. Our narrator is the youngest. She was roughly 4 years old when she was taken, so young that she has no memories of before at all. She has no name. She does not menstruate like the other women. She has never known the touch of a man, never known what a family feels like, never loved in the way the older women speak of with grief and longing. She is a completely unprecedented kind of human being, a person who has inherited a world entirely from 40 women. Every piece of language she has, every concept, every idea of what a life can be, all of it came from them. She is us, in a way. She is all of us at the very beginning. What the book does brilliantly, and this is the part that I think most readers miss on a first read, is that the landscape itself is a character. The vast, empty plains the women walk across aren't just a post-apocalyptic backdrop. They are the interior of a mind that has been stripped of everything familiar. They represent radical uncertainty. We don't know what happened to the world. Harpman never tells us. And that's not a flaw, it's the whole point. The unanswered questions mirror the narrator's own condition. She is walking through a world she cannot name or explain, just as we all are, every single day. Think about what it means that everything the narrator knows was taught to her. Every word. Every concept of love, grief, history, mathematics, beauty, borrowed. She didn't discover fire. She inherited the word for it. And here's where Harpman is doing something philosophically serious. She's asking us what any of us actually know from scratch. The answer is almost nothing. We are all walking collections of inherited knowledge, received wisdom, second-hand experience. The narrator just makes that condition visible because it is so extreme in her case. She is, in the most literal sense, standing on the shoulders of 40 women. The female solidarity in this book is neither idealized nor cynical. It's just true. The women form bonds, teach each other, protect each other, but they also grieve privately. They argue, some retreat into silence, some lose the will entirely. Harpman doesn't give us the fantasy of women in solidarity as a utopia. She gives us something more honest, community as survival strategy, with all its frictions and failures. The loss of individual women as the journey continues is one of the most quietly gutting things in the book. There's no dramatic death scene. People just stop, and the rest keep moving. And this is where the book becomes genuinely difficult to read, not because of violence or darkness, but because of something quieter, the loss of spirit. Harpman shows us women who were once full of fire and curiosity who simply wear out. Not dramatically, not with a grand speech, they just stop walking. They lie down. They give up the journey. And there's something in that which feels unbearably familiar. We've all watched someone, maybe ourselves at a hard moment, stop pushing forward. The book names that experience without sentimentalizing it. The spirit goes out like a lamp running out of oil. But our narrator endures. Not because she's stronger, not because she's smarter, partly because she's younger, yes, but Harpman gives us a subtler reason. The narrator has nothing to mourn. The other women grieve a world they remember, families, lovers, careers, homes. They grieve a before. The narrator has no before. She has only now and forward. Her lack of memory, which we might see as a wound, becomes paradoxically the thing that keeps her alive. Grief for a lost world is a weight. She carries none of it. She is pure present tense. Let's connect this outward for a moment. Lord of the Flies is the obvious comparison, another story about people outside civilization building their own social order from scratch. But here's the difference. Golding's boys tear themselves apart. Harpman's women build. The book quietly demolishes the idea that society without institutions collapses into violence. Instead, it suggests something more interesting, that what we call civilization might simply be care, kept up under pressure. And when care breaks down in this book, it breaks down not into violence but into exhaustion. That distinction matters enormously. It also sits in conversation with Cormac McCarthy's The Road, another story of survival across an empty, post-catastrophe landscape with no explanation given. But where McCarthy gives us a father and son defined entirely by their relationship to each other, Harpman gives us 40 strangers who have to build relationship from scratch. And it speaks directly to The Handmaid's Tale. Women's bodies under surveillance, women stripped of identity, women surviving a world designed to erase them. Except Harpman's book is stranger and colder than Atwood's because it gives us no villain to name. No Gilead, no commander, just the cage, and then the plains. And here is where the book becomes not just a feminist text or a dystopian novel, but something closer to a philosophical fable about the human condition at its most universal. Think about what the narrator represents. Born with nothing, no prior knowledge, no roadmap. Everything she needs to survive, she must receive from others or discover through trial and failure. The terrain ahead is completely unknown. What she will find, what she will lose, who she will become, all of it a question mark. Is that not an exact description of being born, of growing up, of being alive at all? The grief in this book deserves its own moment. Grief is handled not as a dramatic event, but as a slow atmospheric condition like weather. It seeps into everything. The older women grieve their lost lives in quiet, private ways. They sometimes speak of before, and those passages are heartbreaking precisely because they're so brief and ordinary. A kitchen they remember, a sound, a smell. It's the grief of normalcy interrupted. And the narrator watches all of it from the outside, like someone looking through glass at a feeling she cannot quite access. That particular loneliness, being adjacent to grief but unable to enter it, is one of the most original emotional spaces I have ever read. Here's something I bet you didn't know. Jacqueline Harpman was not just a novelist, she was a trained Freudian psychoanalyst who practiced for decades. And when you know that, the entire architecture of this book shifts. The underground cage is not just a physical space. It is a model of the unconscious mind. The women trapped below, with no access to the world above, with only fragments of memory they cannot fully access or trust, that is a psychoanalytic image of repression made literal. And the journey across the plains, that is the talking cure. Moving through unknown terrain, making meaning from scattered fragments, trying to get somewhere, anywhere, without a map. And the title, I Who Have Never Known Men. On the surface, it seems to describe the narrator's physical reality. She has literally never encountered a man. But sit with it longer. Never known men in French carries a resonance close to the biblical sense, to know someone intimately, fully, completely. This narrator has never been seen, never been defined by a male gaze. never had her identity shaped by relation to a man, as daughter, lover, wife, mother. She is, perhaps, the first truly free female subject in fiction, not because her life is easy, it is brutally hard, but because she is undetermined. She was never told who she was supposed to be. And about that ending, I won't give it away, but I will say this: it doesn't resolve. It doesn't offer consolation. The book ends the way life tends to end, or the way a therapy session ends, not with answers, but with a different quality of stillness. You close it and you sit there, and that sitting is the point. The book has done its work not by explaining anything, but by expanding the space inside you where the questions live. That is, if we're being precise about it, what literature is for. So let's bring it all together. I Who Have Never Known Men is operating on at least 4 levels simultaneously. It is a post-apocalyptic survival story. It is a feminist meditation on identity and the male gaze. It is a psychoanalytic fable about consciousness, memory, and the unconscious. And it is a philosophical allegory for the experience of being alive, for the way we are all born into a world we did not choose, equipped with borrowed knowledge, heading into an unknown terrain, losing people along the way, uncertain whether the destination exists at all. The narrator, with no name and no past, becomes the most universal figure in the book precisely because she is the least defined. She is the part of us that doesn't yet know what it is. The part that is still walking, still watching, still taking notes. She doesn't get love in the way the others did. She doesn't get the grief that comes from having had a full life interrupted. But she gets something the others don't. She gets to witness all of it and carry it forward. That's not a consolation prize. That might be the most important job there is. Here's what changes when you see the book this way. It stops being a sad story about women trapped and becomes something stranger and more hopeful. A story about the irreducible resilience of curiosity. The narrator keeps going not because she knows what's out there, but because she needs to know. That drive, that insistence on looking over the next ridge even when every ridge has been empty, is the most human thing in the book. And it is the thing Harpman is asking us to recognize in ourselves. The spirit that keeps going, even when it has every reason not to. If this changed how you think about survival stories, about who gets to survive, what survival even costs, and what we owe each other on the journey, then you'll love our video on Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, another post-collapse story that asks what it actually means to preserve civilization when civilization disappears. The answer it gives might surprise you just as much as this one did. It's already on the channel. Go find it. We'll be here when you get back.